Hey, good afternoon to you. 406 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we're going to talk to a teacher out of Montgomery County, Maryland. Christopher Goodrich is with us. He's a high school English teacher, and he's seen some very troubling things inside the classroom as they relate to all of that phone usage. We'll talk about that big problem coming up. And then at 5:30, John Schweppe is here from the American Principles Project. He's alerting us to a Republican effort, at least in part, to undermine an incoming Trump presidency. We'll talk about that. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Of course, your calls are still coming in right now on this issue that we just have been telling you about here. This afternoon, the breaking news is that Donald Trump is being compelled to pay, at least for now, $355 million in New York because Judge Engoron has determined that he defrauded the banks, which the banks, again, say they weren't defrauded. And the New York Times says that this fine, provoked by the Attorney General of that state, Letitia James, who ran on destroying Trump, this fine could, quote, wipe out Trump's entire stockpile of cash. And that's what the left wants. If he suffers, they're gleeful. If he suffers, they're gleeful. Later in the program, I'll play for you some Stephen Colbert audio. Last night, he was fantasizing about Donald Trump being arrested, and the crowd was chanting like it was the Roman Colosseum or something. It was insane. They were so excited at the notion of Donald Trump someday being behind bars. For Trump's part, things are going well for him in Georgia right now because it looks like Fannie Willis and company, their whole case is just absolutely collapsing before our very eyes. We'll see how far that goes. But the attacks keep coming, and now a massive, massive hit financially, which, of course, Trump will appeal, and we await Trump's remarks on this subject. Here's Frank in Ashburn, line 6. Frank, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Colonnese Show.
Hello, Vince. Thanks for all your good work and for hearing me.
Yes, sir.
It's just the way that a totalitarian regime imposes its will on its citizenry when we have a capitalistic monetary system. It's nothing but pure, sheer totalitarianism. And believe me, as they come for more and more and more of our rights, pretty soon they'll be able to put us in jail for these kind of things.
Right, and if you're just watching this and thinking like, well, I guess he must be guilty of something. At this point, I mean, your eyes aren't open. You're a sheep. You're just following along, and you're not realizing what's happening to your country, are you?
I don't think the people, left or right, are paying enough attention to this. Because if they could do that to him and somebody of his success and stature and power, what could they do to the average person? It's mind-boggling. It's no different than in any kind of a totalitarian regime or communist regime. It's the same thing.
Right.
Only, believe me, they were able to do it with money. It had come to the time when they were able to do it with physicality. That's coming.
Right now, it's the justice system. It's just the total subversion of our justice system for political ends, whether it's to harass people who they disagree with or to protect people that they think are on their side. It could be releasing violent criminals out into the public, releasing illegal immigrants, or prosecuting people who pray outside of abortion mills. I mean, we've seen it all. And in fact, you know, the left has been mocking Trump lately for using the phrase debanking, because Trump will stand up on a stage and talk about this threat of debanking, how people are getting thrown out of their bank because of their political views, or they spend money, for instance, buying a gun, or maybe they're buying a new magazine for their gun, and they're being debanked because the left is placing pressure on them. It goes right to your point. We're seeing it everywhere, Frank. It's just all of our institutions being corrupted by this desire to achieve political goals or to hurt people who they disagree with.
And what I don't understand is how roughly half the country voted for Trump, probably more, right?
Yeah.
So we need to be, how can I put this? We need to be organized in such a way that we can literally protest this in mass. I mean, there should be, especially with the J6 thing, nobody even really talks about all these people that are still in jail, not charged for what, 2.5 years? People should be outraged, but we don't have an organized effort. There should be 1 million people standing at that White House every day protesting what happened to Trump, what they did in J6, all of our rights being impugned. We're not doing enough. We complain about it, we talk about it, but there has to be an organized effort. 70 million people voted for Trump, more than that, right? What if we had 500,000, 3 times, 4 times a month on the lawn? I'd sign up. I'd absolutely take my vacation doing that.
Reminds me of the Tea Party era. What you're referring to. You remember back to the late 2000s. Remember the Tea Party era as Obama was coming into office. There were these rallies all across the country. People would all get together in local church parking lots, and they'd stand there and they'd have a rally just in their own community for a better outcome for their country. And man, that really led to some big political shifts, didn't it?
Well, there you go. I didn't even think about that. Just imagine if we could take that times 10, because I think people can really start to see now, if you're paying attention, with it. The Tea Party, you're right, was the very beginning of it, and they hated that. And you know that you hit a nerve on J6 when they did what they did. Their message, don't you ever do that again.
But your warning is well taken, Frank, because remember what they did with the Tea Party, right? So the Tea Party comes up. You get all sorts of people protesting, peaceful protests all across the country. They don't like what's happening to them. They don't want new taxes. They're opposed to take over the healthcare system by the government, all of those things. And all of a sudden now the IRS is targeting Tea Party organizations and looking to destroy them and looking for names like Patriot and Tea Party. That's a perfect expression of where conservative activism was then confronted by a tyrannical government which didn't want to see those countervailing forces out in public.
No, you're exactly right about that. So what we have to do instead of cower, because like I said, on January 6th, the message was, don't you ever do that again. You know you had them scared. You get 4, 5, 6 million people on the mall, that's going to make them stand up. They're going to cower. That's what we don't do enough. We don't homogenize and congeal. And if you had enough of that, I once read a book when I was a kid, something about overthrowing a government. They talked about the Bolshevik Revolution. They said it takes roughly 10% of the country. That's what you have the radical left doing now. It's not the majority. The media wants you to believe that. The majority are not that. It's the minority. If we stand up now together, we could crush this.
Yes.
But that's what we need to do. We need to have a loud voice.
Frank, thank you. Great. You're a patriot, man. I really appreciate the call. Guy cares a lot about what's happening in our country right now. Thank you, Frank. Let me see here. I've got Brad calling in from Fairfax now, line 5, on, again, the breaking news that massive several $100 million fine just imposed on Trump for literally no other reason than the politics of it. Brad, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Vince. I have to wonder if this is going to backfire and decimate New York State and New York City economically, because, if a judge can do this to Trump and his company and take this much money away from a private business, what incentive is there for large corporations and the banks that lend to them to stay in New York? It might drive business away. This could backfire.
And they have been doing quite a bit of that, as I understand it. They've driven a lot of business away from New York, and this could accelerate that. The businesses that stay behind, Brad, are going to have to pay up for the protection racket. You're going to have to pay up for every stupid, crazy, harebrained, left-wing cause you can possibly imagine just to be safe in that environment.
Which also incentivizes further leaving New York.
Yeah.
As to what Frank just mentioned about millions of people making them cower, I don't know. I think they just raise taxes, build more prisons, and then put all of us in jail.
Yeah. Suddenly, they're very for cracking down on criminals once they decide that their political opponents are criminals. That's
absolutely right.
That's the pattern. Thank you, Brad. Excellent points as always. Thank you for that. Let's see. I've got Hoke calling in from Round Hill, line 7. Hoke, good afternoon.
Hey, Vince. I used to have a friend who was a lobbyist for Altria, Philip Morris, and I used to tell him that they should stand up on the steps of the Capitol in New York and say, you know what, we hear you. We are pulling every one of our products off your shelves tomorrow and letting them make up the tax base. Trump should do the same thing. He should go in tomorrow and close every business, every building that he has in New York and walk out.
Yeah, I'm not doing business here anymore. I'm getting out. And, but it's just so sad, though, because you look at Trump's a New York guy, obviously. And I imagine that there's a lot of sentimental value to this because that's really where he made his mark. He's got these the incredible businesses, incredible towers, and a lot that he's very proud of, and he should be there. And the left has decided that attacking that is their goal, because they hate him as a person. They really want him just to hurt. This is a sadistic move on their part.
Yeah, I just don't know what appeal process he has, because can this go even anywhere other than the New York State Supreme Court? And they're no different. Has he got anywhere to go for relief?
They say that he can appeal this. So I'm not sure of how that works. I'm the wrong guy for that right now. But apparently they expect appeals. So for now he's going to fight to hold on to his own money. But yeah, but this is a big deal. This is a really big deal, and just a really tragic commentary on what's happening in our country right now, Hoke.
It is. I don't know what we do, Vince. I'm scared to leave this country to my kids.
Yeah, that's why we got to fight for it now. Thank you, Hoke. I appreciate the call. Let's see here. We have so many calls going in, so I'm trying to sort through all of them here. I've got Phil in Fredericksburg, line 9. Phil, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Look, I don't understand how a man who has committed no crime, how banks who have not been defrauded, how there is no plaintiff, and yet he's found guilty of a $400 million judgment. This is like communism come to life in America. It's just crazy. I don't understand how this can stand. He's got to be able to go to the Supreme Court and be able to reverse this ridiculous program that's been put against him. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no question. Something has to be done here. I mean, this is. I agree with you. It's bewildering. The whole case has been bewildering as long as it's existed, because we've been sitting here, Phil, saying, "Wait a second. There's not a single place that says they were defrauded by him. How could she even be bringing these charges?" And here she is, and here we are, and now he's going to be out if this holds, upwards of $400 million.
This cannot stand in America. It cannot stand in America.
Yeah, amen. All right, let's get Steve in North Carolina in here. He's on line 5. Steve, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, how you doing?
Good, sir.
Listen, when they turn over the forms to the banks to borrow the money, don't they say that they're not liable for it, that the bank's got to, verify their worth, right?
Well, one would assume, right? The bank's entire business is judging who should get a loan and who shouldn't, and whether or not they're going to net a profit off of that arrangement.
Right, exactly. So my thinking is Trump gets elected president, and he decides a little retribution, and he comes back and says, well, I think I'm going to charge the attorney general and the judge with the crime.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I guess we'll see what that looks like should he become president. You know what? Obviously, Steve, we want to live in a world where that's not the kind of thing that's even necessary.
Right, but you're going to have to fight fire with fire.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, scrutinize this guy like crazy. Check every single. If he's ever, we should just have people tailing him. I'm not talking about stalking him. Just like literally just observing his traffic patterns when he leaves the courthouse. If he takes an illegal turn without putting a signal on, notify the authorities.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, Steve, from North Carolina. I appreciate that. Okay. All right, hold on. We've got a lot more here. Of course, more breaking news today, and we'll try and give you an update on what's happening down in Georgia, too. That Fani Willis fiasco continues there. Okay, meanwhile, down in Georgia today, Fulton County, today's court proceedings have adjourned literally just moments ago. For now, I don't think we have a full-blown conclusion yet to whether or not they're going to disqualify Fani Willis and company. Today, that the attorney Terrence Bradley, Nathan Wade's law partner and his divorce attorney, was testifying for hours, and it was a very painful series of questions and answers. He was going really slow and having all sorts of processing errors as he was listening to the attorneys ask him questions, and he kept asking him to repeat the questions. And really the big sticking point is because he was a divorce attorney, he thinks he can basically Hillary Clinton and everyone around her style hide all of his communications with Nathan Wade, who is Fani Willis's lover. Oh, I can't talk about what I knew. I can't talk about when they started the relationship. I can't talk about the specifics of it, how much knowledge I had of their romance. It's all attorney-client privilege is the claim. So they're still trying to resolve a lot of that. That's really where we are today. But I will say in summary, and we played some of the audio at the top of the program, does not look good for her. She's got one of her lifelong friends who came out at the beginning of the hearing yesterday, said, yeah, this is a relationship that's been going on since 2019. I know it for a fact. There's no doubt in my mind. And then Nathan Wade takes the stand and he says, well, it wasn't really a secret. We were just trying to keep it private. And then he's got this kind of like pothead explanation for when his marriage ended. He's like, well, it ended in 2015, he says. Therefore, he wasn't cheating on his wife. And that may be true in moral terms, I guess. But as far as the state's concerned, he was still married. As a legal matter, you were still married. And then when you're asked on forms in which you're swearing you're telling the truth to the state of Georgia, whether or not you spent any time with or gave any money to or paid for any benefits to a woman who was not your wife, well, the answer to that is yes. And he said no, 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 over and over and over again on sworn documents. And so yesterday they were trying to suss that out, like, hey, wait a second, like you're lying on these forms and you're swearing you're telling the truth. And he kept saying, well, no, I wasn't actually married. Well, you actually were, even though, as far as the state was concerned, you were actually married. So that's what we're dealing with here. Fannie Willis says, I pay for everything in cash. There's no paper trail of all of my expenses. I was reimbursing him for everything. Really? So you used cash to do it? An untraceable format? To prove to the public that everything's on the up and up? Why is everybody lying to me? They're all lying. We'll see if the judge detects it. Coming up, all the breaking news here. Like I said, we're awaiting word from Donald Trump, his reaction to the big fine he's just been handed by the left up in New York, hundreds of millions of dollars, and more from you as well. And Donald Trump's also responding right now to some breaking news out of the New York Times today, alleging that he has a big policy as it relates to an abortion ban. The New York Times says Donald Trump is ready to introduce a 16-week abortion ban nationwide. If he did, that would be in line with what the majority of the country is in support of, actually. But is it true? We'll explore. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 4:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we're going to be joined by Christopher Goodrich. He's a teacher in Montgomery County, Maryland. There's a big problem with the phones in the classroom. He's diagnosed it. He will talk about it with us coming up. And then at 5:30, John Schweppe is here from the American Principles Project with a warning about how Mitch McConnell and company may be laying some traps for Donald Trump when he gets into office again. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Be good to talk with you today on yet another busy news day. In fact, the New York Times had a report today that Donald Trump is currently mulling a 16-week abortion ban nationwide. 16-week abortion ban. Now, I will say, when I saw the headline, I said, if this is true, then that would be in line with the overwhelming majority of America, which does favor having restrictions on abortions. Look, most Americans, no matter where they fall on abortion, are for killing babies in the second trimester or beyond. It's almost like that's like the agreed upon issue. Although the media typically doesn't tell you that. So I thought, as I clicked into the New York Times piece today, I was like, are they going to admit this? And actually, they do kind of. They kind of do admit it in the copy. The authors, Maggie Haberman, Jonathan Swan, Lisa Lehrer. Former President Donald J. Trump has told advisors and allies that he likes the idea of a 16-week national abortion ban with 3 exceptions in the cases of rape or incest or to save the life of the mother, according to 2 people with direct knowledge of Mr. Trump's deliberations. Mr. Trump has studiously avoided taking a clear position on restrictions to abortion since Roe v. Wade was overturned in the middle of 2022, galvanizing Democrats ahead of the midterms. He said in private that he wants to wait until the Republican presidential primary contest is over to publicly discuss his views. He doesn't want to risk alienating social conservatives he has secured the nomination, the 2 people said. They say one thing Mr. Trump likes about 16 weeks is that it's a round number. Know what I like about 16? Mr. Trump told one of these people, who was given anonymity. It's even. It's 4 months, Trump allegedly said. When discussing prospective vice presidential candidates, Mr. Trump often asks whether they are, quote, okay on abortion. He's instantly dismissive when he hears that a Republican doesn't support the, quote, 3 exceptions. Those would be the ones he mentioned up front. He tells advisors that Republicans will keep losing elections with that position. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in June of 2022, Mr. Trump told advisors he believed the decision would be harmful to Republicans. This is the Times reporting this somewhat blindly here. Since then, he has formed the view that the abortion issue is overwhelmingly responsible for a string of Republican losses in congressional races. So, I'm going down to where they talk about the political value of this. In backing a 16-week ban, Mr. Trump would be trying to satisfy both social conservatives, who want to protect babies, that's not what the New York Times says, but who want to further restrict access to abortions, is the way they describe it, and Republican and independent voters who want more modest limits on the procedure. Abortion is currently banned at various states of pregnancy before 16 weeks in 20 states, including Mr. Trump's home state of Florida. The type of ban that Mr. Trump has discussed privately would restrict abortion rights in the remaining 30 states where it is legal beyond that point. Now, they do get to the details here. They say an AP/NORC poll released in July of 2023, a year after Roe was overturned, showed a, quote, slim majority disapprove of a ban after 15 weeks of pregnancy. In the survey, Democrats mostly supported such a measure and Republicans mostly opposed it. I think they have this backwards. Republicans supported banning abortion from 15 weeks on, and Democrats opposed that. So I actually think this is just a mistake in the copy here in the New York Times. They say a 6-week ban polled poorly among a majority of Americans. Okay, here's the data from Gallup. I went and I pulled this up. Tim Carney over at the Examiner wrote about this recently. The headline on his piece is Gallup poll shows most Americans would vote for a 15-week abortion ban. He wrote this in June of last year. And this is, I think Lindsey Graham was the one. Graham was presenting this in the Senate. 15-week abortion ban. And all sorts of Republicans were being asked to account for it. Here's what they have. Only 37% of Americans believe that abortion should even be legal in the second trimester. That's a third of the country. Just a third of the country thinks that abortion should be legal in the second trimester. 55% of Americans think it should be illegal on that same survey. In other words, that's at 15 weeks. Now, at 16, you'd imagine you get a few more who say, yeah, it should be illegal. And very few still thinking it should be legal. So just in summary, Trump's position is the most popular position on this issue in the country. Like, don't let the lunatics who are on cable television dictate the terms of this debate. The reality is, like, most Americans aren't comfortable with abortion. They don't want it. They don't want more of it. It's not a social good. They're not the shout your abortion types. They'd like to see less of it. And in fact, they sort of widely agree that the second trimester, we should really knock it off after that. I mean, we're dealing with a human, and we shouldn't kill it. So Trump, if this is real, Trump is tapping into the popular position here. Now, here's what the Trump team is saying. In fact, if she had actually come on the program, we would have been able to ask her about this today, but she can't right now. She, as I said, the Trump campaign is kind of battening down the hatches for the moment until Donald Trump himself speaks on today's civil suit out of New York, the Letitia James thing. But here's what the Trump campaign is saying as of this afternoon about this New York Times article. Headline on their own press, this is their own press release, Trump campaign statement on fake news New York Times article. Quote, as President Trump has stated, he would sit down with both sides and negotiate a deal that everyone will be happy with. President Trump appointed strong constitutionalist federal judges and Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe v. Wade and sent the decision back to the states, which others have tried to do for over 50 years. Joe Biden and virtually every Democrat in Congress is on the record supporting radical on-demand abortion up until the moment of birth and after birth. That would be Ralph Northam. As well as using American tax dollars to fund the killing of the most vulnerable. A statement from Caroline Leavitt, National Press Secretary for Trump 2024. And they're right about that. The radical position here is not Trump. It's not the pro-life people. It's not the people who are trying to keep babies alive. It's the people who think that you should execute a baby not just up until the moment of birth, but if it survives birth after an attempted abortion, to contemplate letting it die on the table without any care. That was the Ralph Northam approach to this. Just ghoulish, just the most ghoulish stuff you could possibly imagine. And it's encouraging to see the Trump campaign bring that to light, because that's one of the ways out of this. I think a lot of Republicans duck this issue. They're like, I don't want to talk about it. The appropriate way to talk about it is to emphasize the radicalism of the left here. Say, is that what you're for? Is that what you're for? You're for babies dying, partial birth abortion, that kind of stuff? No. Nobody's for that. Nobody's for that. And there's a way to take the high ground, because you have it on this issue. So that's what's going on with Trump. There's this New York Times article today about the abortion plan. And at the moment, the Trump campaign is saying, no, it's a fake news New York Times article. Fake news. Let's see. I've got Susie calling in from Gaithersburg now, line 3. Susie, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi. Yes, I wanted to tell you why I absolutely hate and I absolutely love Trump's view and a 16-week ban. On the one hand, I really hate it because it's totally dishonest to say that any amount of abortion is okay, and you take the popular view, you take where you have most of the vote, you take what most people supposedly can tolerate, and it's just dishonest. We want no abortion, but nobody thinks that will go through. So you have that side. But on the other side, I totally love Trump's view because he's the only one that's going to follow through and actually do anything about the ban. There are bans all over the place. There's a ban in Maryland that Carhart, jokingly laughed about, making up excuses why people come in for an abortion over a certain number of weeks. We know that in Pennsylvania there were all, stacks of court situations of abuses, and they were just completely overlooked. So he's the only one that will follow through and actually do something about these abuses that are going on all over the place. Bring it on.
Yeah. And to his credit on this issue, he's had a track record of success. He speaks to the March for Life, first president to do it in person. He gets Roe v. Wade overturned by virtue of the justices he put in place, achieving something that the pro-life movement has spent many decades praying for and agitating for. I'd say that in the best possible way. And mission accomplished. And actually, you have millions of people who are alive today who wouldn't otherwise be alive because of that. So that the Trump presidency has resulted in saving so many lives, and it's a real credit to him. But to your point, it's some of this is just about the art of the possible. You and I, if I could snap my fingers and convince everyone right now, like, yeah, we're dealing with human life here, and let's all be honest about it, and let's talk about that, that would be great. But that's not the way the debate's held right now, unfortunately. So you do what you can to save the lives you can, given the ability to do that in a system that does entitle the voters to make decisions like this. I think. Anyway.
Absolutely. I do agree with you. I know that a lot of people do not take that view, but like you said, there are lives being saved, and he does follow through. Whether people like the way he does it, he keeps his promises. Keeps his promises. Yeah,
that's the goal. We'd like them to keep his promises, all of them. Make promises to us, then keep them, or else leave. Susie, thank you. I appreciate the call. So that's an interesting story, but for now, it looks like the Trump campaign may be knocking it down. Now, what's the truth here? What's behind it? Was it a trial balloon of some kind? Did somebody at the Trump campaign really leak it out just to see what the reaction might be in public? Who knows? Sometimes that happens. But if that's the case, can I just make a recommendation to the Trump campaign? Stop leaking to the New York Times, if that's the case. No, stop. I get it. Trump likes his hometown paper. He wants them to like him. It's not going to happen. They hate him. They're always going to hate him. They're always going to trash him. But, it just keeps happening. All right. Let's see here. I'm going to take a phone call on a different topic. I've got James calling in from Frederick now, line 4. James, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Oh, hey, Vince. Thanks for taking my call. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The thing I want to discuss is TikTok and the Biden campaign.
Yes.
Is where's the oversight? I mean, if TikTok is banned from every government, facility, if you would say, then who's filming Biden? You understand what I'm saying? It's banned from the government, but yet the campaign is the campaign's separate.
Yep.
But where's the oversight on who's filming Biden?
It's all just like a huge mess, isn't it? So the campaign has just announced that they're joining TikTok. The federal government's official position, as led by Joe Biden right now, is that TikTok is a national security threat, and therefore federal employees are not allowed to have it on their work phones. And yet they have this like incoherent policy of we're going to promote our campaign on TikTok.
But we as the government, can we claim oversight over that? That's what I'm asking. I mean, that's the weird issue. I mean, it's the in between. You know, this guy can go. I don't care who he is. You know, it could be Trump. It could be Biden. I don't really care right now. If you're going to ban one thing or another, then how can you promote on it? And where is the oversight?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure where that would emanate from. I guess that it would be the House. The House Republicans would have to do something about this. And for instance, like, is he shooting it on government property? Are they shooting these videos inside of the White House? Is there a White House staffer holding the phone? And are taxpayer resources being used for things like this?
That phone is government property. So
unless it isn't, unless it's like a campaign phone.
Well, campaign phone. That's what I'm saying. That's where I'm saying. Where is the oversight?
Right. Yeah. We're not getting
oversight on that.
No. Yeah, you're totally right. But we're not getting much, are we? So, no, but it's an excellent point, and it's insane. The truth is, he shouldn't be on it. It's ridiculous because it is appropriate to ban TikTok from these government devices. It shouldn't even be on phones in the United States. It's one of the most corrupting influences in our entire country, and it's a psyop controlled by the Chinese government, and we're just letting it happen. It's actually crazy. But thank you. I appreciate the call, James. It's a smart point. It's wild. Let me get Mike in Springfield in here, line 3. Mike, good afternoon. Back on the issue of abortion bans and what week to set them up at. Mike, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Vince, for taking my call. You know, I remember following after Dobbs when Lindsey Graham introduced legislation, I think for 15 weeks. It was total heresy on the right. And my wife and I thought, well, what a great idea. You know, we watched this issue. I was a junior in Catholic high school when Roe was decided. For 50 years, we just watched this tear our country apart, one side or the other.
Yeah.
And I always thought the 1960s bumper sticker, you know, what if there was a war and no one came? The only practical solution is separate the morality from the legislation. Have a law, do what most European countries do. 16 weeks, fine. And let's have a law there and hope nobody has to use it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And by the way, like the Roe v. Wade standard was that it's okay to have restrictions in the later trimesters. That was the standard in Roe v. Wade. So the whole thing is like kind of a crazy and mostly fraudulent debate. Actually, there is pretty broad agreement. I get like some of the reaction on the right was like, don't do that, Lindsey Graham, because this should be a state-by-state issue. But if you really are somebody who believes that this is life, you're looking to protect it at any level you can get. Agreed.
I also have a solution we came up with. We feel that the guys tend to get off scot-free, so to say. And the idea would be, we call it the Marion Barry Memorial website, where a woman could say, hey, the bee knocked me up. And you name the guy responsible, and using the Texas law for abortion, ordinary citizens could then go see that guy. I think you'd see unwanted pregnancy go down quite a bit very quickly.
Yeah. You should have to pay for your kids. The kids that you create, your responsibility is to take care of them. That's the truth. And some of the left is like, well, if you're for babies being born, then you should be for child support. And the right's always like, yeah, we are. What are you talking about? Like, of course we are.
We are. Exactly.
It's so crazy.
Anyway,
thank you. Good to talk to you, Mike. All right. Donald Trump has made a statement reacting to the Judge Engoron at the behest of Letitia James, forcing Donald Trump to pay $355 million. They claim he defrauded the banks when he took loans, overvalued his assets. The banks didn't say that. It was just Letitia James. Here's the statement from President Trump. Quote, the justice system in New York State and America as a whole is under assault by partisan, deluded, biased judges and prosecutors. Racist, corrupt AG Tish James has been obsessed with getting Trump for years and used crooked New York State Judge Engoron to get an illegal, un-American judgment against me, my family, and my tremendous business. I helped New York City during its worst of times, and now, while it's overrun with violent Biden migrant crime, the radicals are doing all they can to kick me out. This decision is a complete and total sham. There were no victims, no damages, no complaints, only satisfied banks and insurance companies, which made a ton of money. He says, the statement continues, but he says that we can't let the injustice stand. We will fight crooked Joe Biden's weaponized persecution at every step. Make America great again. What do you think this is going to do to Trump's poll numbers? What is it going to do to his contributions? And why won't Nikki Haley get out of the race yet? All sorts of questions, the answers to come.